Middle Passage, white people. Slavery, white people. Jim Crow, white people. Lynchings, white people. Trail of Tears, white people.
White people are the problem.
They are the problem.
White people ain't
White people killed Charlie Kirk. White people enslaved nations of people. White people ruined this country.
So, as a white parent who is very aware of the racism here and everywhere, in most places, unfortunately, it is my job to make sure I educate my children simply not on being not racist, but I want to teach them, and I do teach them, how to be anti-racist.
Nothing will piss me off more than a white man insulting a woman. I lied. Nothing will piss me off more than a white man insulting a woman of color. You are just a weak little man.
Donald Trump's not the problem. MAGA's not the problem. ICE isn't even the problem. They're all symptoms. I mean, ICE is a imminent problem. They're an invading force in multiple cities and states, and they are literally a weaponized version of the Klan that is state-sponsored and has endless amount of money for some reason. But even if all three of those went away today, we would still have the problem. And the problem is this. White people, people who look like you and me.
Let me say that again. The whole history of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking.
What if the biggest problems in society is not what you've been taught? Have you ever stopped for a minute, to think about it? Now, today we're looking at a white professor and several other speakers explaining their views on racism, their views on power, and how these issues have shaped American society for generations. I mean, they argue that racism itself didn't suddenly appear. It didn't just come out of nowhere. They believe it became embedded in institutions and influenced the way many people understood race and the inequality. But here's where the conversation really gets more interesting. They also discuss how some political and social narratives have blamed black Americans and immigrants for problems that they believe have much deeper roots. Now, are all these arguments really supported by any proof or by the evidence, or are there more to this story? Anyway, let's take time to listen to this. Stay with me, because we are going to examine these claims really carefully, separate facts from opinion, and unpack every point that deserve a much closer look. And as always, don't forget to share your thoughts down in the comment section. If this is your first time, please subscribe so we can have more of this. Otherwise, let's dive into this.
Let me say that again. The whole history of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, in the colonies, the colonial elite, looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants, who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another, or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people. Right? So ultimately, the rich figure out they got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness, and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. No more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well, right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks, they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies. Rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. Fast forward to the Civil War era. And you have, I'm from the South, right? My people, the elite in my part of the country, right, actually announced that the reason they wanted to break away from the Union and possibly go to war with their brothers and sisters to the North was in order to maintain slavery and white supremacy. They said that at the time. We lie about it now. And we say it had nothing to do with that. But of course, at the time, they didn't have any shame about it, so they just said it openly. Right? The vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, said that the cornerstone of the new government was the great truth that the Negro was not the equal of the white man. So that's the reason the Confederacy was formed and existed. But here's the trick. If I'm rich and I want to go to war to protect my ownership in other human beings, my property, but you're poor and you don't own any enslaved people, why the hell would you go fight to protect my stuff? Because I'm a rich person. I'm not going to fight. Rich people don't go to war. Right? Rich people get poor people to go to war for them, whether it's in 1860 or whether it's during the 1960s or whether it's today, right? Rich folks get doctors to write notes for them that say that they have heel spurs and that's why they can't go to Vietnam. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, you can Google that shit because he's sitting in the White House right now, right? Well, I can't go fight. I have heel spurs. Send some poor kids to do that for me, please, right? So that's been a long-standing tradition. So the rich have to figure out a way to convince the poor to go fight for them. But that's a hard thing. That's like a hard sell, right? Like how the hell, why would you do that? Why would you go fight to protect my property rights when you don't own anything? The only way you would do it is if that rich person comes to you and says, hey, listen, you gotta go fight because we gotta maintain our way of life because if these people get free, they're gonna take your jobs. No, fool, they already got your job. That's how it works, right? Because if I'm white and I got to charge you $1 a day to work on the farm, but you can get a black person to do it for nothing because you own them, guess who got the job? Free got the job, right? So in a sense, poor white folks would have been better off joining with black folks to overthrow the slave system. That would have raised the wage floor of all working people. But they got tricked by rich white men telling them that their enemies were black and brown. Fast forward to the 1930s. And you have white labor leaders. They're not even the elite, right? The labor leaders are not the elite, but they're the elite within the labor movement. And even they had fallen for it at this point. So they didn't want to integrate their unions. And they would say things like, well, we can't have black people and Mexicans and Chinese folks in our unions because if we do that, it's going to reduce the professionalism of our craft. We have to maintain the integrity of our profession. No, fool, you need more people in the damn union is what you need. And if you don't let those folks in, guess what happens when you go out on strike? Who is the boss going to use to replace you? They're going to replace you with the very same black and brown folks that you didn't want to work next to, right? And so at the end of and then you're going to blame them for taking your job rather than the white rich dude for giving it to them, right? Divide and conquer, telling not rich white folks that their enemies are black and brown. And now we fast forward to the president. We got the president of the United States becoming president on the basis of that same rhetoric. Telling not rich white folks that the reason they don't have a job is because Mexicans took them, right? That's the argument. Keep in mind, there's been a net outflow of Mexican folk from this country, out of this country in the last 10 years. Right now, border crossings and actual in-migration at the lowest level they've been since the 1970s. So anybody who believes that is a damn fool or somebody who does not understand how to do research on the internet or someone who doesn't care, right? But he says the reason you don't have a job is those brown folks took them.
White people are the problem.
They are the problem.
White people ain't the
White
problem.
people killed Charlie Kirk. White people enslaved nations of people. White people ruined this country. White people, not black people. Black people built this country from the ground up. White people came and ruined it.
You
The
are
Italian mob, the Russian mob, the Irish mob.
dividing.
America was divided before I came and talked to you.
Let me ask you.
You were sitting here with people who disagree with Trump and you agree with Trump.
Yeah.
That's division.
Freedom of speech.
That's division. I didn't divide you.
No, you're saying black and white are different.
What's the
We're
difference?
not.
So what's the difference between me saying that and what's his name? Stephen Johnson saying the Democrats are the problem. Is Stephen Johnson not dividing the country politically?
100%.
Is Donald Trump not dividing the country politically?
100%.
Is his office not dividing the country politically?
100%.
So white people are the problem. Not some black man that's sitting out here asking interviews. I'm not dividing the country. White people are dividing the country.
Hold on.
And to that point, when was America ever united?
Hold on.
When was America?
We haven't been. That's the fucking problem.
Hold on. Who caused that?
Hold on.
Who caused that?
Fucking white people.
So what should happen to white people for dividing the country?
Now, he fell on his own sword on that.
Middle Passage, white people. Slavery, white people. Jim Crow, white people. Lynchings, white people. Trail of Tears, white people. Wounded Knee, white people. Asian internment camps, white people. The vast majority of gun violence, white people. You see a trend? January 6th, white people. Ahmaud Arbery, 3 white guys. George Floyd, white guys. The felon in the White House, a white man. You see a trend? But somehow, the white man has convinced stupid, uneducated, trailer park trash, 3-teeth inbreds, white supremacists, Triple K members, that the brown people picking your almonds and your walnuts and your lettuce and your avocados, somehow they're the fucking problem. They're not. We are. And until we grasp that, we can blame and sit here with all of these left bro podcasters and the Pod Save America and the Midas Touches and talk about, oh, it's the cost of eggs. It's the cost of gas. Fuck it is. No, it's not. Why haven't we had a woman president? Why did we go from a black president to the most corrupt white man in the history of our country? Why did the majority of white people, the only demographic that didn't vote for Harris, and that same demographic didn't vote for Zohran Mamdani? Because we're the problem. Because there is a chunk of this country that is afraid that the white majority is going away. And they're going to kick and scream like little children, like Santa Claus taking away your present, because they think that their traditional family values is going away. And this country and the Republican Party has done a good job of indoctrinating a bunch of white men. And just me saying this, leave this country, lib, that's indoctrination. It's a fact. Every sentence, this is how it goes. Once upon a time, freedom, God, Jesus, freedom, freedom, Second Amendment. I went on vacation to Hawaii. Freedom, Second Amendment, freedom, freedom, Bedbald Eagles, freedom, the greatest in the world. This is how their brains are working because they don't have critical thinking. They've been indoctrinated. And for them to be woke, which means actually seeing this country for what it is, it's breaking their brains because they've been lied to their entire life and their version of American exceptionalism is bullshit. And they know it is, and they don't want it to be. Because they want their whiteness to keep them at the top of the food chain. Have yourself a white day.
We've allowed white supremacy to flourish in this country for generations and generations and generations, so long that people don't even recognize it, myself included sometimes, right? I had a moment just last weekend, or just earlier this week in New Orleans, where I was speaking with a guy on a trolley who grew up there. And he's like, well, you're from the South, right? I grew up in North Carolina. That is the South. You might want to fight me on that. It's not the deep South. He said, you know why everyone's so polite here? And I was like, I don't. And he was like, well, we had to be. He was like, everyone had to be polite to each other, especially black people to white people, because if we didn't address them properly, we would get killed. I make U.S. history content. And I didn't even think about that. I grew up in the South and I didn't even think about that. That's how normalized every day white supremacy is in our country. And if the white people in this country don't decide that they're going to extricate the cancer that is white supremacy from themselves, from their homes, from their communities, from everything that they are surrounded with, we will be right back in this position 5 years from now. 10 years from now, however long it takes for the cycle to regenerate, because it will happen. Trump's not the problem. MAGA's not the problem. ICE isn't the problem. It's white supremacy. It's been white supremacy. It will be white supremacy. It's always been that. And if we don't work towards it to fix it now, then when? Oh, and by the way, if you're a white person watching this, guarantee you, when we get rid of white supremacy and the systemic white supremacy that kills people every day, every single one of us will be healthier. We'll all be wealthier. We'll have better access to food. We could even have walkable cities. We could have walkable cities, but that's white supremacy in action, right? The way we've designed our cities is white supremacy in action. So just think about where you want this country to be in 5 or 10 years. Think about how loud you want to be. You will lose people. That's okay. We'll have each other. Let's go for it.
I'm from Mississippi, and on the 4th of July, my son's best friend came with us to my family's get-together, and their friend is black, and he was the only black person. My son's friend was obviously going to be protected with us, as are all of our black friends, because I'm very aware of how racist people can be in Mississippi. And I even told my kids before we left for my family's 4th of July thing that if anyone said anything racist, that they knew that their mama was going to speak up, say something, because I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're my own family. I'm going to call you out on your racist BS, and that we would immediately leave, because I'm not going to tolerate that ever. So my kids know that about me, but I also want to make sure that they know that we have to speak out no matter who it is. I don't care if it's family. People come out and are saying, you need to warn your kids about being the only black person amongst a group of white people, especially in certain places around here. Very much so. I agree with it. I'm always telling my kids, if you are with your friends who aren't white and you're around any certain area and someone comes out saying racist stuff, you have to be the one that speaks up. You have to intervene. When my kids were little and they would go play basketball at another guy's house, his neighbor always hung a Confederate flag. And I would tell my boys, if y'all are set on playing basketball there at your friends, please know if that man ever comes outside of that house, you have to be the one to speak to him. Do not let your black friends try to say anything, because you never know what that man might do to them. So as a white parent who is very aware of the racism here and everywhere, in most places, unfortunately, it is my job to make sure I educate my children, simply not on being not racist, but I want to teach them, and I do teach them, how to be anti-racist and how to use the privilege that they have as a white person around here to make sure that they're the ones speaking up and intervening to protect all their friends who aren't white, because they're going to be viewed differently than their black friends. And so they have to do that. They have to step in. So if you're a white person and you get offended by people saying, don't let your black children be the only black person going somewhere with a white family, we should not be offended. We should be very aware of what they have to deal with all the time. And it doesn't matter if we're the exception to that rule. We should understand where they're coming from, and then also do our part to make sure we're educating our children on how to be better stewards of the privilege that they have, especially in these places, and to make sure that they're protecting their friends.
Welcome back, brothers and sisters. Now, before we get into what I think are like the 5 major themes being discussed in this video, I want us to pause for a moment and now think about it, because I think there is something that is so important and we shouldn't overlook in this video. I mean, regardless of whether you agree with every statement that was made in this video or you don't, but I think there is one thing that really stands out. You see, several of the people speaking in this video, including those white speakers, are openly admitting, and they're saying that racism is not just a problem for black communities to solve. It is also something that them as white people, they have to solve within their own communities. They need to confront it. Now, that conversation, I think, is something so important, and it really deserves some sort of attention. Because, you see, meaning of change usually begins when people are willing to examine, the problems close to home. Like, they're able to sit down before they confront a problem, they search within themselves. Because there are moments you deal with a problem not knowing you are the problem. Okay, so I think that's good instead of always pointing fingers at black people or somewhere else. Now, I also came across, a certain comment that, really caught my attention. I mean, listen to this. White supremacy is a cancer, it's hierarchy, it's oppression, it's obedience, it's conformity, it's exploitation, it's subjugation, it's performance, it's manipulation, it's polite, and it's violent. It stops us from knowing ourselves or from ever knowing another. It's a perfect front yard with the blinds drawn closer to horrors inside. Now, whether you agree with every word that that comment carries or you don't agree, but I think that comment really reflects how strongly some people feel about the legacy and the impact of white supremacy as an ideology. Now, notice something so important. The comment itself is talking about white supremacy, not saying every white person is the same. No, that distinction is really worth making. You really need to see there's a difference. It's just about white supremacy, which means inside, in the group of white people, inside there is another group that really take it really seriously to call themselves white, and they don't want to mix with everyone. They are the ones calling themselves white supremacists, because individuals are responsible for their own actions, while harmful systems and ideas should be examined on their own merits. And also, I think that's why one of the white mothers in this video stood out to me, said something so important. She wasn't saying her children should feel guilty for being white. No, she was saying she wants to teach them to recognize racism, to understand, to believe it exists, to be in the shoes of black people, to feel that, yeah, it's something that is really painful, okay, to stand up for their friends, their black friends, and to use whatever influence they have to protect others when they see some sort of injustice. Because there are moments that some white supremacists, okay, they'll do something deliberately, so they want a black person to react, and then they take that advantage, okay, that, oh, you did this, regardless of they are the ones who started the chaos. Like the white people, they are the ones who started this, who get this black people, the black person, started. They just do that deliberately so that they want to provoke this black man, so that whatever he does, they'll take advantage in order to attack him. So this white woman is training her children, okay, to confront, because when those moments come and these are white people who are there, they should be the first one to talk, like, no, you cannot do this to this black person, it's my friend, something like that. So whether you agree with every part of that approach or you don't agree, but I think that's an example of someone who is trying to choose responsibility over silence, okay, training people. If every white parent was doing this, if every black parent was doing this, I think things would be much easier in the future, because racism is a trend. It's something that people are told while they are young. Now let's move into what I believe are like the 5 biggest themes being discussed throughout the entire video, throughout the entire compilation, those clips. Now, theme number 1, history still shapes the present. We can't deny that. You see, almost every speaker points back to like historical events, points back to slavery, points back to discrimination and other injustices, arguing that the past continues to influence modern society. So you see, for many black Americans, history is not simply something found in textbooks. It's something that still affects opportunities, affects trust, affects everyday experiences. It's like it's inside them. It's no longer something you can just read that, oh, in the past there was slavery, there were people who were working in plantations forcibly without being paid, they were beaten. It's beyond that. They live it. So I think, yeah, that's worth taking note of. Theme number 2, it's about accountability. You see, accountability begins within your own community. Now, let's talk about it. In the video, several speakers argue that if people want to reduce racism, they have to challenge prejudice wherever, like, they see it. Like, oh, there is some sort of prejudice here. Even if it exists among family, among friends, or people who look like them. That's what I think, like, is a principle that applies to everyone regardless of their race. So yeah, it's worth noting. Theme number 3 is about black voices. You see, black voices and black experiences deserve to be heard. They deserve to be recognized. Now, throughout the discussions, there is a repeated message that too many black people have spent generations explaining their experiences, explaining their pain, explaining their struggles, while many others dismissed or ignored them. Like, oh, you are just, you're just exaggerating or you are lying, okay, without sitting down and really be in the shoes of these black people. Now, listening doesn't mean agreeing with every conclusion, I know, but it does mean that taking people's lived experiences, their struggles, is something that is worthy to be taken seriously. And the theme number 4, let's talk about the division. Division really benefits somebody, okay? Division benefits somebody. There are people who deliberately, bring division so that when these people and these people are divided, they will take advantage. You see, someone in the video argued that ordinary people are often encouraged to blame one another instead of asking bigger questions about power, bigger questions about, the leader, the policies, and the system that shape, the society. So, yeah, whether you agree or you don't agree with that argument, but I think it's a reminder to think about it critically instead of accepting every political message at face value. And finally, theme number 5, real progress requires action, not just words. People have been talking about this. I think it's high time people need to implement, time to go on the ground and, have some sort of action. You see, it's easy to post online. It's easy to argue. It's easy to accuse. It's easy to blame somebody. But lasting progress comes from building stronger communities, creating opportunities, supporting fair treatment, and refusing to stay silent, when injustice really happens. Because, that's why black people now are on this, wealth transfer, okay? They are deliberately choosing to buy, from black-owned businesses, from black-owned stores, from black-owned, entrepreneurs. They're deliberately, that's the action that is needed. Instead of just worrying about it, instead of just, complaining every other time. But yeah, you have to take an action. Now, some viewers will agree with everything that has been said in this video. Others will disagree with some of the part. It's okay. I know that's okay, because we are not forced to disagree or agree. No, it's how you look at it. But the important thing is to think critically, examine the evidence, separate broad generalization from documented history, and keep the conversation focused on solutions rather than jumping to conclusion without critically looking into it. So anyway, let's continue watching as these stories unfold, because trust me, there are more things that are happening. If this is your first time, please subscribe so we can have more of these discussions again and again. Otherwise, I love that you came to watch the video. Don't forget to share your thoughts down in the comments. I'll greatly appreciate. See you next time.